It was such an unbelievable situation that I was beyond angry, and I was just stunned. My boyfriend, Mark, and I have known each other since our college days. Even after graduation, we stayed in touch, but Mark and I were strictly just friends. It wasn't until recently that our relationship turned romantic. Mark suddenly started seeing me differently, and before I knew it, he proposed to me. I didn't dislike Mark. In fact, I even thought it might be nice to be in a relationship with him. But then came our wedding day. Mark's mother, Karen, had once dressed his ex-girlfriend, Sarah, in a wedding gown when they were dating during his high school years. I was left speechless. The unbelievable part was that Mark looked happy to see Sarah dressed like that. His parents even said,
"We always wanted him to marry Sarah."
His ex-girlfriend, Sarah, chimed in.
Come on, it's not fair to your future daughter-in-law.
Not entirely dismissing the idea, Sarah glanced at me with a smirk. It made me so angry that I tried to take my parents home. But just as I was about to, my parents suggested something. My name is Linda Thompson. I'm a 40-year-old office worker and still single. I have a best friend, a guy named Mark Stone, whom I met in college. Mark is a man, but he's one of my closest friends. My female friends often tease me, saying, "You two are definitely dating, right? Or you act like a couple. Or you're really in love, aren't you?" But I've never seen Mark as anything more than a friend. Mark is a great guy. I'm sure he'd treat a woman with care. But to me, he's just one of my friends. When I asked Mark about it, he was clear. I don't see you as a girlfriend either. So we spent our 20s and early 30s just being friends. But that changed when Mark said something unexpected.
I think it's time for me to get married. I'm serious. I'm at a good age. I want kids, and I want to give my parents some peace of mind.
Really? So, do you have someone in mind? What is she like?
Yeah, it's you.
What?
I want to marry you.
Wait? No way. I was completely stunned. After that, I started to think about Mark in a different way. I never really planned on staying single, but Mark, that's a bit unexpected. Still, he's always been kind to women, and I'm sure we get along well as a couple. I've known him for so long, but I never imagined he was thinking about this. Well, that makes sense. We're both turning 40, and my parents are eager to see some grandkids. Maybe it's time to say goodbye to being single. I wonder what Karen will say. I know her, but introducing myself as the future daughter-in-law, that's nerve-wracking. After that, Mark and I officially became a couple and started by living together. Once we got used to living together, we decided to meet each other's parents. Today is the day I'm meeting Mark's parents. I'm so grateful for everything Mark has done for me.
"Oh my, Linda, come on in. Though I must say, I can already see how this will turn out. But if you're okay with that, please come in."
Outcome? What outcome is she talking about? Of course, Karen knows who I am, and I've spoken with her before. So there's no reason to be overly nervous, but when it comes to marriage, I can't help but feel jittery. But when I walked into the living room, I was shocked. Mark had already informed his parents about our engagement. So I knew they would be there, but there was a woman I didn't recognize in the room. Mark doesn't have any sisters. So who could she be? A cousin? A relative? As Mark continued to talk casually, I assumed she must be a relative. Then Karen turned to Mark and said,
"Mark, I'm sorry, Linda, but don't you think Sarah here is a better match than some woman like her? Sarah is thoughtful and considerate. I can't approve of a marriage to someone who's been all over the place.
I was stunned. What? Sarah, who is this woman really? She's encouraging Mark to marry her, so she's not a relative, and calling me someone who's been all over the place, right in front of me. I'm not a player. And if I were, why did they even allow us to live together?
Mark, marry me. I can cook way better than she can.
Sarah, the woman, smiled sweetly. If Mark had been the kind of guy who could firmly reject her right then, I wouldn't have felt so bewildered or upset. But instead, Mark grinned and said,
Well, this is quite the dilemma. I guess I'm a pretty popular guy. Oh, Linda, did I introduce you? This is my ex, Sarah. We dated back in middle and high school.
What? I mean, sure, Mark has his charms, but weren't we here to announce our engagement? Why is his ex-girlfriend just casually here? What is this? This is just a ridiculous farce. Not to mention, he proposed to me. Why is his ex even here like it's no big deal? I just can't wrap my head around this. Didn't they break up so that he could be with me? What's going on here? My head was spinning. I wasn't angry at Sarah so much as I was baffled by Mark's family for accepting her presence so easily. Well, Mark, we are getting married, right? I asked Mark, who was sitting beside me, trying to keep my voice calm.
Oh, right. Mom, Dad, I'm marrying Linda.
Why not Sarah? She's prettier, and she's a better cook too. I'm sorry, Linda, but you should marry Sarah. I'm really rooting for her.
I see.
Did he say I see? Mark, get a grip. I was screaming inside at this ridiculous conversation between Mark and his parents. In the end, the conversation didn't revolve around the future of Mark and me, but rather whether he should choose me or Sarah. Naturally, Mark didn't give a clear answer, leaving me feeling uneasy and frustrated. On the way home, I confronted Mark. Seriously? I took the day off work to meet your parents because we're getting married, but why did your ex end up being the star of the show?
Come on, don't worry. I'm with you.
Unbelievable. I knew you could be indecisive, but your ex. And what's wrong with your parents? If they're so keen on your ex, why did they even let us live together? I couldn't calm down. I was furious. On my next day off, I told Mark, I'm just going out for a bit to do some shopping, and left him watching TV as I headed to my parents' houses. My parents know Mark well. I told them about what happened at his parents' place the other day. So that's the story, I said, munching on some snacks as I explained the situation to my retired parents. Isn't that crazy? Or am I the one who's crazy? What do you think?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. If that's how it is, what was the point of letting you two live together?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I instantly reacted to my mom's understanding words. Then, as I was leaving, my dad, who had been quietly listening, said,
Leave it to me.
After that, Sarah kept coming to our apartment, trying to force meetings with Mark and even bringing homemade food, insisting on coming inside. Since I work a desk job, I usually get home earlier, so I was able to stop Sarah. But her attempts became more aggressive day by day, and eventually, for some reason, Mark gave her a spare key. I really can't understand this. Sarah comes into our home whenever she wants, cooks meals, and even washes Mark's clothes. It's like she's playing the role of his live-in girlfriend. Stop coming in here without my permission. I finally reached my breaking point one day and yelled at Sarah. Then she started crying.
I'm Mark's future wife. Why do I have to be pushed aside? You're just his girlfriend, and you think you can live with him.
She's calling herself his wife when they're not even married yet. This makes me look like the bad guy. What's unbelievable is that Sarah kept quietly sobbing until Mark got home. And when he did, she threw herself into his arms and cried even harder. Mark didn't seem entirely unhappy about it as he tried to calm her down. What is this? What am I witnessing? Should I just cancel our cohabitation and move out? No, I need to trust Mark. I believe he'll choose me in the end. He's just getting caught up with his ex for now. It would be silly to run away from this. I won't lose. So, despite Sarah's constant advances, Mark and I continued with our wedding preparations. The wedding was supposed to be a grand affair, with both families splitting the costs. I had tried on my wedding dress, planned the bouquet design, and prepared everything to my satisfaction. I thought that by getting this far, Sarah would finally step back. That's what I believed. Then came the wedding day. I arrived at the venue with my parents, ready to prepare, only to find Sarah wearing the wedding dress I had chosen. What the hell?
First come, first served. Marrying Mark. Let's get married.
If you love me that much.
Mark, with a joyful expression, walked over to Sarah. I've been with Mark for a long time. This is a huge betrayal. The thought that my parents had spent their money on this farce left me speechless with shame. Dad and Mom, let's go home. It looks like there's already a bride here, and apparently that's what Mark prefers. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this charade. I tried to take my parents' hands to leave, but my dad held onto mine.
Leave the rest to me and stay at my place. Go get your things from the apartment you shared, and then let me handle everything.
I didn't quite understand my dad's intentions, but I did as he said and got into a taxi. I had the taxi wait while I quickly gathered my belongings from the apartment and then returned to my parents' house. Being back home felt comforting. There's no way Sarah could come here. Home is where I find peace. It's so much better than that shared apartment. Exhausted by everything, I fell asleep on the couch. I was awakened by the sound of my parents coming home, laughing heartily. You're back late. So how did the wedding go? Then, unable to contain her giggles, my mom showed me a video. What's this video?
Your dad got revenge for you. Just watch it. You'll feel better.
The video was of Mark and Sarah's wedding, a nightmare I thought I had escaped. But instead of a joyful atmosphere, the video showed Mark being scolded by the wedding guests.
Why is the bride's name different?
You said you were marrying Linda.
What's going on? Explain yourself.
Well, the bride's name was written down wrong.
Do you really expect us to believe that? Are you blaming the venue staff now? You can't just shift the blame and get away with this.
The guests pressed Mark, and even the MC tried to calm them down, but it's not normal to mix up the bride's name. That's why the guests were so upset. Mark then tried to pacify the crowd and continue the ceremony. Quite the nerve, Mark. But then a slideshow of photos made by Mark's friends started playing, and once again the guests erupted. Hey, what's going on? The woman in these photos isn't the same. Of course, there wasn't a single photo of Sarah. Despite this, the wedding continued. Then my dad confidently took the microphone and stepped forward.
Well, today, we're celebrating Sarah, who has taken my daughter's place as the bride. Congratulations, Sarah. And it seems Mark has chosen Sarah over my daughter, Linda. Now, Let me share with everyone here the situation between these two.
The guests started murmuring, confused by what was going on. Everyone had their phones out, recording my dad.
First, let's talk about the bride, Sarah. You have a debt of $200,000, and you're planning to make Mark and his parents pay it off, aren't you? Normally, no one would allow such a thing, but it seems Mark, who can't see through Sarah's intentions, is completely clueless. And this debt, it appears, was all spent on another man. The groom's mother, who called Linda a player, doesn't even know who the real player is. Not to mention, Sarah is a top hostess in the nightlife business, and she's been involved in questionable activities to secure clients. Sarah, whose child are you carrying in your womb?
At that, Mark looked at Sarah in shock. Sarah averted her eyes.
And Mark, the groom, has been a regular at the casino, racking up a debt of $50,000, which he's been making Linda pay off. And not just on his own. He's also been borrowing money from his parents to cover it. What a lucky bride you are, Sarah, to have such a husband. Linda, who was supposed to be the bride today, went home with a broken heart. How do you all feel about this?
At that point, the friends and relatives from my side of the family started shouting,
"What a scumbag! I wouldn't marry him if you paid me."
A perfect match of a couple drowning in debt.
You two should get out of here.
What a ridiculous farce this whole day has been.
Let's all go home, everyone. There's no point in staying at a wedding like this.
With that final comment, the guests from the bride's side began to leave in droves. Mark tried to stop them, but no one listened. The groom's guests then crowded around Mark, demanding answers. The video ended with the sound of Sarah crying echoing through the venue. Well, that's right. Dad can be really scary when you're on his bad side. After all, he's the head of a detective agency with his own network of information, and even some politicians are afraid of him. I was reminded of my dad's power. Now he was sitting at the dining table, casually dressed in his usual clothes, reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened.
Your dad asked our relatives and your friends to throw in those jeers and put on a bit of a show. Everyone is on your side. Honestly, I can't believe Mark's family would choose a woman like Sarah. They must be out of their minds. Your dad, I, our relatives, and all the guests here are on your side. So don't worry. It's a good thing this happened before you got married. It might be tough to claim any compensation, but your dad made sure to get revenge for you.
Tears welled up in my eyes. They were tears of joy. When I glanced at my phone, I saw messages of concern from friends and relatives. I carefully responded to each one with a heartfelt thank you.
Mark won't be able to stay at his company anymore. Honestly, what was he thinking? Inviting his boss and colleagues, and then switching the bride. It's his own fault. He deserves no sympathy.
That's true. For a while, I commuted to work from my parents' house. Some of my coworkers expressed concern, but I reassured them with, "I'm fine. Sorry for worrying you." Then, on one of my days off, Mark and Karen came to our houses. My mom silently sent Mark and Karen into the living room, but didn't offer them tea. Instead, she called my dad from his study. Once my parents and I, along with Mark and Karen, were all gathered, our conversation began.
Well, could we have some tea?
Oh, I don't think you're in any position to be asking for that.
My mom shot back at Karen's request.
Mark, don't you have something to say to Linda that's more important than tea?
With gentle prompting from my dad, Mark quickly apologized.
Linda, I was wrong. Please give me another chance. I got carried away with Sarah and ended up neglecting you. I know it's unforgivable, but I'm truly sorry. Please, I want to marry you. I'm begging you.
We've already kicked Sarah out. Linda, I'm so sorry. You're the better wife for Mark. We realize now that you're the one who truly deserves him. So please, come back.
The nerve of these two making such self-serving demands. I had a lot on my mind. Mark.
Linda, please, let's start over.
How about you pay back all the money I helped you with for your gambling debts? I covered a lot of that, remember?
What? Now? I don't have that kind of money anymore.
Even a child knows you have to repay what you borrow.
Come on, don't be so harsh.
Living with you was hell. I kept telling myself that it was because I was going to be your wife, but I lost half of my savings helping you pay off your debts. And yet you never even said thank you. Not marrying you was the best decision I ever made. Go ahead and live your life drowning in debt with your ex, Sarah.
But don't say that. We've been together for almost 20 years.
And who gave your ex, Sarah, a spare key while we were living together? Do you have any idea how cornered that made me feel? Sure, Sarah might be good at cooking and cleaning, but a $200,000 debt? That's impressive. Well, enjoy living in debt together, and don't forget to pay back every cent of the money I covered for you. And that's not a request. It's a demand.
A demand? Come on, I know I messed up. I'm really sorry. So, can you just help me out a little?
Don't you dare talk nonsense.
It was then that my dad snapped. He had been a martial artist in his younger days, so his angry voice carried a lot of weight. Even Mark and I fell silent under the intensity of his outburst.
Your debt is your own doing. You're an adult. Figure it out yourself. And don't ever touch Linda's savings again. You kicked out that woman, Sarah? Well, that's just basic decency. What on earth are you thinking? If you can't live without relying on others, then go ahead and live a life at rock bottom. And don't ever step foot in this house again. Get out.
Mark and Karen turned pale as my dad's shouts filled the room. My mom stood up and firmly directed them to leave.
Well,
Do you still need something? You're not even family, just strangers.
Hearing that, Mark and Karen hung their heads and left. I turned to my dad and thanked him. Dad, thank you,
I didn't do anything at all.
he said with a smile, and I smiled back. After that, I sent the spare key to the apartment back to Mark, signaling that I never wanted to see him again. But then someone unexpected reached out to me. After work, I returned home to find that my parents were out grocery shopping at a distant store. I was alone, so I decided to call the friends and relatives who had supported me during the wedding fiasco to thank them again. That's when it happened. A call came in from an unknown number. It wasn't unusual for me to get calls from unknown numbers due to my job, so I picked it up without thinking. Hello.
How could you?
Excuse me?
How could you do this to me?
The voice on the other end was a woman, crying and shouting. I realized who it was, Sarah. I could guess how she got my number. She probably asked Mark or someone around him. What are you talking about? Who is this?
Thanks to you, the wedding is off. It's all ruined. I was kicked out of my houses. How am I supposed to live now? I have debts and I'm pregnant. I was supposed to have a life with Mark. How could you do this to me? Pay me compensation. Give me alimony. Just give me some money.
I was the one who got left at the altar because of you. Do you really think you have the right to demand anything from me? Don't you think it's a bit shameless? You're acting like a child.
What? Because of you, I've been cut off from my family. Your dad wrote a letter to my parents. How could you do that? My parents were my last hope, and now I have nothing. You're a horrible woman, the worst.
Isn't the real horrible woman you? Acting like a spoiled child, throwing a tantrum. How embarrassing. I heard you're 40, right? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Even a child knows how to apologize, but you can't even manage that. It's you who lacks any sense of decency.
Shut up. It's all your fault. I was supposed to marry Mark and live happily ever after. Now all I have left are debts and a child. It's all your fault.
The noise was too much, so I hung up the phone. Then I blocked the number. A little while later, the landline rang. I had a bad feeling about this, but it could be one of my dad's friends. Since retiring from his job as a detective agency head, he's taken up golf with his buddies as a hobby. So I picked up the phone. Hello.
Who do you think you are hanging up on me? Are you planning to run away? I knew you were nothing but a bad woman.
It was Sarah. I could have hung up again, but I felt like I needed to settle this once and for all.
You homewrecker. You've ruined my life, turned everything dark. You owe me compensation. Just give me money. I know you've got savings. Just hand it over.
Her words were all over the place, but I still responded. Why should I give you my savings? Think about it calmly. You're the one who interfered with Mark and me. What's with that first come, first served nonsense? You're acting like the tragic heroine, but if anyone's the victim here, it's me. Anyway, you're not getting any money from me.
Shut up. I could come over there and storm into your house. Don't think you'll get away with this. You don't know how scary I can be when I'm mad, do you? This is all your fault for seducing Mark. He was supposed to marry me.
Her ranting made no sense and I was bewildered. But I didn't know how to block calls on the landline. What should I do with this call? Time was just slipping away. Look, I've suffered because of you too. Where's my apology? Not that I'm expecting one from someone who can't even act like an adult. I'm not asking for some fancy gift, just a simple apology. Can't you manage that? And let's not forget, you're the one who dumped Mark in high school. So why am I the one being accused of stealing him?
How dare you? What gives you the right to say that? Fine, then give me a baby gift. Just hand over the money. I'm so sick of being chased by debt collectors.
Normally, baby gifts come after the baby is born. Asking for it up front is pretty rude, don't you think? If you're that desperate for money, why not seek help from a nonprofit organization or some government assistance?
I don't care. I want an apology and money from you. That's it.
Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. It was my dad who took the receiver from my hand. Dad?
Leave this to me.
At some point, my parents had come home, putting their shopping bags in the kitchen. I'd been so absorbed in the call that I didn't notice. My mom waved me over to the kitchen, so I followed her.
That woman, Sarah, right? Let your dad handle it. Help me put these groceries away.
Oh, okay. I left the phone to my dad and helped prepare dinner. 2 hours later, my dad finally hung up, looking thoroughly fed up. How did it go?
She ranted about a lot of things, so I mentioned taking legal action. She's a persistent one, that's for sure. She's still holding a grudge about the letter I sent to her parents. We should all be careful for a while. Maybe I'll talk to a friend of mine on the police force.
Thanks, Dad. I was worried, but I followed my dad's advice. Then, late that night, it happened. I was in my room, my parents were in theirs. I started to drift off to sleep. I was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. I jumped up and ran to my mom's room first.
Mom. Linda, are you okay?
It sounds like it came from downstairs. I'll go check.
My dad, who had rushed into my mom's room, headed downstairs. I heard his voice and a woman's voice, so I went down with my mom.
How dare you? You stole my happiness, you homewrecker.
When I reached the living room and saw the scene, my blood ran cold. A brick lay on the floor. One of the glass doors had been completely shattered. And there she was, Sarah. She was clearly out of her mind. It looked like she had forced her way in, and my dad was trying to stop her rampage, stepping on broken glass as he did.
Call the police. This is insane. She's completely lost it. Hurry. Call 911.
Yes.
Let go of me. I'll curse Linda. Where's that homewrecker who stole my happiness?
My mom followed my dad's command. I couldn't believe what Sarah had done, and I walked toward her, stepping on the broken glass myself. Then, with all my strength, I slapped her across the face. Who's the homewrecker now? As I yelled, I heard the sound of police sirens approaching. Sarah, stunned from the slap, started crying uncontrollably. Through the broken frame of the glass door, I could see neighbors gathering outside. Soon after, Sarah was handcuffed and pushed into a police car, arrested for various charges. My dad handled the situation, explaining everything to the police officers. The incident even made the news. Apparently, reporters swarmed Mark's house after the event. We didn't press charges against Sarah, but we didn't help her either. Later, Sarah's parents came personally to apologize, and they hired a glass repair company to fix the door, bringing the incident to a close.
To think she would do something like that. The world's really gone mad.
My dad, a former martial artist, still had his strength even after retiring. If my parents had been weaker people, it's terrifying to think what Sarah might have done to them. This was an event that showed just how dangerous a woman's jealousy can be. Sarah was later sentenced to prison. Mark's family, dealing with the aftermath, ended up moving far away. Who would have thought that being involved with Mark would lead to something like this? Life is truly unpredictable. After the incident, I took some time off and invited 2 friends on a trip. Of course, I covered all the expenses.
No way. You can't get compensation from that jerk Mark.
That's so unfair, especially after his mistress caused all that trouble.
We lounged on deck chairs at a luxurious hotel with a private pool, chatting and relaxing. Well, I wanted to file a claim, but Sarah's parents gave me a large sum of money. And besides, she's in prison now, so what's the point? It's all over anyway.
You're so tough.
Are you sure about inviting us to such a fancy hotel?
It's fine. This is the least I can do. I wanted to thank all the relatives who helped too, but they all declined any gifts. So thank you both so much. I'm going to find myself a better man.
That's the spirit.
Yeah. Hey, do you know anyone? Introduce me to someone nice.
We laughed and talked about love as we splashed around in the pool. Women really do come alive when they fall in love. Of course, one should never become obsessed. I would never want to lose myself like Sarah did in her fixation on marrying Mark. And so I regained my freedom and found happiness once again.